Dragon Ball Daima, episode 10, titled Ocean is Here. Real quick recap. Last week we saw the creation of a brand new Majin called Majin Cou. He was created from the base of a Cyberman using the Cyberman seeds that was in possession of the witch Marba and the essence of Majin Buu, which Dr. Irinsu herself collected on Earth. Majin Cou's first task was to go and defeat Tamagami 1 and collect the Dragon Ball for Dr. Irinsu, and that's where the episode begins. Now remember, Majin Cou can speak. The first thing he does, he gets to Tamagami 1 and he challenges him for the Dragon Ball. Just like Tamagami 3 with Goku, he confirms if that's true and that he's there to challenge him, and he accepts the challenge and the fight begins. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to tell you straight up. Majin Cou is a bum. Like, he is a bum. He has a very interesting and unique fighting style. He's very unorthodox. He's like doing all these flips and he's jumping and just kind of goofing around. But he fires off a key attack at Tamagami 1 and he just cuts it in half, like into pieces, like it was nothing. And you just get this sense that this is a mismatch and Majin Cou has no business fighting this guy. But I guess we shouldn't expect too much when at least half of you is made up of a Cyberman. And since there's a lot of back and forth in this episode, I'm grouping this into two parts. So I'm going to cover everything with Majin Cou first, and then we'll get into Goku and the others, and that'll make it a lot easier to follow along. And it's honestly what they should have done with this episode. Anyways, back to it. The Majin Cou, he's firing this barrage of blasts at Tamagami 1, and he does this it's kind of a cool technique actually. So this one, it's kind of like he makes a tornado around himself and he covers himself with it and he dives towards Tamagami 1, which looks really cool. It kind of reminded me of one of Majube's attacks, the one he uses against Baby, but this one he's just kind of diving at him. But it doesn't do anything. He dives right past him, and Tamagami 1, he grabs him by the belt, he grabs him by the waistband, and he just whips him. He just whips him back and throws him into this wall, and just boom! Who's just laying there, just like, ugh. But it was really cool. Tamagami 1 is a really cool fighter. I really like what they do with the Tamagami. And it's funny, if any of you are wrestling fans, if you guys know, like superstars like Hurricane Helms or Santino Marella. That's kind of who Majin Cou reminded me of in this fight. He's just this small guy. He's really goofy, and he's just stepping up to this giant, like how they would step up to Big Show or like Kane, or like when Hurricane Helms is like trying to double choke slam Kane and Big Show, and everyone's just laughing and stuff, and it's just like, what is this? This guy is he's just not on this level. But he actually surrenders to Tamagami 1. He's like, hey, I yield. I give up. See you later. And he just runs off. He just runs back to Arene suit. He's like, hey, sorry, I tried my best. And she's just like, oh my gosh. Well, looks like, he's another failure. And so they take off, they get back in the plane and leave, and she's like, I'm really disappointed in you and stuff. And it's just like, oh, hey, come on, I'm still good for stuff. I could probably use me as like good for cleaning and stuff like that. So for anyone who thought Majin Cou was going to be a big bad, or like the final boss or whatever, rest easy. He's not that big a threat and couldn't even face Tamagami 1 and stuff. But, he's kind of funny though. He had some cool attacks. He tried his best, but he just wasn't built like that. So while that was all happening, Goku and the others, they arrive at Warp. They successfully pass through. They have a pin number. Supreme Kai changes Goku's ears again so that, he's can go pass through unnoticed by Warp. And they actually stop at the gates. You remember, like, there's those, like, the red, yellow, and blue, like, circle, like, gateways. They stop there for a minute and they're like, wait, couldn't we just go straight to the first demon world and just go straight to Goma? But Goku reminds them, he's like, no, we have to collect the other Dragon Ball still, so we have to go to the second demon world. Glorio agrees with them, and so they go there. Goku does, though. He does express concern about Dende. But Supreme Kai assures them that Goma and Degasu, they're not hurting Dende because they see him as useful, and so they don't want to damage the goods, in other words. Well, maybe that's not the right expression. That that could be interpreted a different way, but they're not gonna hurt Dende. Dende's okay for now. He's just in his little crib and he's being read stories and stuff like that. He's living the good life right now and they have no idea. So finally, we are in the second demon world. We've made it. And so we cut to Vegeta, the others, they're on the plane, and Bulma, she's looking at herself in like the window, just admiring her skin. She's like, "Oh, my skin is so nice." And Hibis, he's just looks over at her, just like, I can make you my girl. And Vegeta just turns to him. He's like, "What?" And he jumps up. He's like, "Absolutely not. Her and I are already married and stuff." And Hibis is just like, "I don't care." He's like, "I don't see a ring on it. I don't care." But it's really funny. It's funny, but it's also a really sweet moment because this actually makes a lot more sense with Vegeta's reaction when they meet Beerus in a few years and when he slaps Bulma. Because if you remember in Z, even at the end of Z and stuff, like even after he like self-destructed to, try to get rid of Boo and protect Bulma and everybody and atone for all the crap he did, he never showed this kind of like love or concern or like care for Bulma's like safety and stuff like that. And like we've seen it twice so far in Daima. Like he stands between her to keep her safe. He's defending her and stuff. He cares about their relationship, and I think it's really sweet. And Bulma, she jokingly says that she should probably just stay that age. She's like, I don't need to become an adult again. I'll just stay like this. And Vegeta's just like, hell no. He's like, we're turning back together. And so it was actually pointed out. I don't know if anyone else said it, but Fame, Geekdom 101, he actually mentioned that this is probably the moment where Bulma becomes obsessed with like, like taking care of her looks and wanting to look younger and all that, like all throughout Super. And so he pointed out probably where she gets it. When she turns into a kid again, she's like probably starts missing her young age and all that, and it makes a lot of sense. So shout out to him. And it's funny, Hibis, he makes one other jab, like one other quirk towards Vegeta. He's just like, I get it. You just like big boobs, don't you? And so Vegeta he doesn't deny it, but he just kind of looks at him. He's like, this guy, he's frustrating Vegeta. So I hope he doesn't actually turn out to be a villain because don't give Vegeta a reason. He's already pushing his buttons. But it's a good scene. Great comedy. So Goku and the others, when they arrive in the demon world, they're actually being watched by Goma and Degasu, and Goma is just freaking out. He's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe they've gotten so far already. And so he's not having a good time, but he's keeping a close eye on them after everything that's been happening, especially after finding out that they got the first Dragon Ball. The Glorio, he says that the Tamagami is actually close by, which I called it. I called it. Tamagami 2. I guess he has the two-star ball. I don't remember. I think it's just 1, 2, and 3 between the three of them. It makes sense. But he has the trident, and we see him in the opening like credits and stuff, or like the intro. And he's fighting in the body of water. They're now in an ocean. So I have a feeling this is gonna be a cool maybe we get an underwater battle. But anyways, so Supreme Kai, he asks, he's like, "Hey, are there still Krakens around?" Goku's just like, "What?" He's like, "Krakens, they're giant sea monsters and they're freaking huge." And Pansy's just like, "Oh yeah, I heard they're like islands and stuff." And so they're these big old monstrosities that live in the water around here. So Goku fights all these planes, and we get a really cool sequence with him. He's just like, dodging them. He's just flying around, smoking them with his power pole. But we get a really funny scene, and I don't know if it's a throwback because technically it takes place years after this during the Broly movie. And remember when Goku, he like lands on like the front like windshield, and he's just like, and like where he's like huffing and puff fogging up the glass and stuff. He kind of does the same thing here. He just like lands on the front windshield, and he's just smiling at like the soldiers inside, and he just smokes them with his power pole. And it was a really cool sequence. It was pretty short. We get to see some fun action. This episode has had a lot of action so far, and I really liked it. And for me personally, I've had a little grudge against these planes since they first attacked Goku and the others, because when they were running from them, I was just like, oh, come on, Goku, you can deal with stuff like this. This is nothing. He was facing all this kind of stuff in like the Red Ribbon Army with like vehicles and lasers and stuff like that. But here he proves it. He smokes these planes, and even like when they're firing like a barrage of lasers at him, he's like twirling his power pole and he's deflecting all the lasers, cracks one of the planes on the side, and it just blows up behind him. Great scene. So now their plane's damaged and they lost altitude and they're skimming over the surface of the sea. Goku goes back inside, but once he does, we see this big, like this freaking massive shadow is just like getting closer and closer underneath the water. And I don't mess with stuff like in the ocean. Like I don't mess with deep ocean stuff like that. So I couldn't I don't know how I would react in this situation. This giant kraken just surfaces. You just hear like this deep, just guttural roar and stuff. Just emerges and tries. It almost eats the ship. It almost swallows them. And once it like kind of goes back under, like one of its tentacles comes up and it has like this big old spike on it, and it just wraps up the plane, just coils it, and just immediately begins to crush it. And everyone's just freaking out. And so they're like, "We got to get out of here." And so they jump out of the plane. They fly off. Pansy like turns around. She's like, "Oh shoot!" And so she rushes back in there. You're like, "Wait, what are you doing? And why would you go back in there? It's just it's just your luggage or whatever, stuff you can replace." But she goes in there, and Goku rushes after her, and this thing is just crushing it, and like it actually starts like collapsing on her. Like she's getting like squished between like the ship, like what Broly did to his dad in the Z movie. And Goku, he's like reaching for her, he's like calling out to her, and it's kind of a tense moment. But he gets her, takes her by the hand just as it closes its mouth. The second Goku grabs her, just chomp. And so Glorio and Supreme Kai are just like freaking out and stuff. But luckily, we see Goku and Pansy. They fly out of the corner of its mouth. They're okay. Fly up to him, and they're just catching their breath, just like, oh my gosh, and stuff. And Supreme Kai's like, wait a second, the Dragon Ball and stuff. And so there's like, oh great. But Pansy, she came in clutch again. This is 2 times in a row. She's on the ball, holds up her backpack, has the Dragon Ball safe and sound. And so good job, Pansy. So they continue just by flying normally because they don't have to worry about the heavy air tiring them out and stuff. And in the distance, we see a green world, lush trees and all this stuff. The home world of the Namekians, the actual home world, not Namek back in Universe 7, not in space like we thought that was originally where they came from, but the real home world here in the demon world. So they decide to stop here because they have to wait for Vegeta, Bulma, and and Piccolo to catch up. And so Glorio's just like, oh, that's actually a good idea. So they stop here, and Goku, he recalls the fight with Frieza, and we see this really pretty, like, just art shot of like Frieza when he destroys Namek. It looks really cool. Growling, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm hungry again." And Gloria's just like, "Nope, nope. We just had breakfast not long ago. You have to suck it up." And so Goku's like, "Wait a sec. I think I have something for like this and or something that could help." And so he looks through the little baggie they got earlier from those shop owners, and he pulls out a revive bug. And so just like a senzu bean, it restores his energy, and it even filled his stomach a little bit. Goku said he wasn't as hungry anymore. So pretty they're pretty handy. And so Glorio, he actually insists that the village is abandoned. So it actually is. It looks just like Planet Namek, but it seems a lot more lush. Um, there's just trees and just like nature. It just took over everything. Like there's homes and stuff with like plants growing over them and moss and all that. It's super old. It's obvious that nobody's lived there for a very, very long time. And Goku, he's just like, wait a second. I sense Vegeta. They must be here. And so he flies off. And just like Goku, the mistake Glorio and Goku and them were making, they were skimming the surface of the water. And Goku, he flies up to him and stuff, and he's like stops in front of on the window. He's just kind of holding on to it, and he's just like, "Wait a second, stop, stop!" And he's like kind of playing charades with them, and they're like, "What is it? What is it?" and stuff, and he's just making all these faces and stuff, and they're like, "Just let him in." And so he gets in there. He's just like, "I'm trying to tell you that there's a giant monster here," and so there's like, "Oh, what? What do you mean?" And Vegeta's like, "Ha." A monster. You really afraid of such a thing and stuff, and the same kraken just bursts out of the water. Like you just see its eyeball just like right against the window, and the eye alone is just bigger than the whole plane. And Vegeta and everyone are just like, holy shit. So this thing almost gets him, and Goku's like, see, I told you. He's like, and it's interesting. So here's a fun little thing for people who like to power scale and stuff. Goku says they can't handle that thing. He says this thing's too strong for us right now. And so I don't know if it's just because they're tired or it's because they're small, but he doesn't think they can deal with that Kraken. And so they get out of there. So they reach the Namek homeworld, and Piccolo hops out and he's looking around, just kind of taking it in. And Goku asks him, he's like, "Hey, Piccolo, isn't this where you're from?" He's like, "No. No, I wasn't born here, but my father was born here." And you're like, wait, who's his father? Now remember, Piccolo and Kami used to be one being, and when they were that one being, they were known as the Nameless Namekian. You might as well just call him Piccolo. But the Nameless Namekian, his father is actually spoken of by Elder Guru on planet Namek and is referred to as Katatsu, or Katats. And so Katats is the one who would have been in this world and then fled to the outside world. So that's who Piccolo is talking about. And it's actually kind of a sweet moment or a bit of a somber moment because Piccolo is just like, even though I've never been here, it's pretty pleasant. And so, I don't know if this is exactly how he's feeling, but that's kind of what I feel like Piccolo might be feeling is, because he didn't know where he came from for a long time and eventually learned he was an alien, supposedly from planet Namek. And then when he went there, he sees his people just getting devastated by Frieza and his men. And then, their world gets destroyed. And so he thought his home world was once destroyed. They get New Namek and everything later, but he didn't, you know. But that wasn't really an issue for him. But I'm sure it was pretty. Um, he probably had a lot of emotion or different feelings seeing his home world, like the real home world where his people came from and where his father came from. And Supreme Kai actually speaks a little more about this, saying that in the past, previous Supreme Demon Kings viewed Nameks as useful beings and treated them as slaves. So a lot of people theorized and wondered why they would have left their, original realm. Now we know they were enslaved by the previous Supreme Demon Kings, and they didn't want to do that, and so they left. And it's sad because now we know that's why they left in the first place, and then they go to the outside, eventually find Namek, and then Frieza and his men show up eventually and do the same thing to him and wipe out almost all the people there. So the Namekians have gone through a lot of stuff in their lives. Thankfully, the worst is behind them. Moro. Now, Dragon Ball Daima has given us an impressive amount of lore so far. We've learned about Supreme Kai, we've learned about his original name, where he came from, where his people came from, that they're not actually just from the Kaioshin realm, or, planet Kaio. They originated from the demon realm, but none of that compares to this. So brace yourselves. Long ago, the good Supreme Demon King of that age sought to expand the demon realm. This guy looks awesome. He has such a cool design. He's like kind of like a mix of King Kadon and King Abra, Deborah's father, but he's cooler than both of them. He has like all this jewelry and stuff, a sword. He looks awesome. He, being the Supreme Demon King, ordered the powerful Super Majin Rimus to create the universe. Take that in. To create the universe. Rimus is a being that is, according to Supreme Kai, is the highest authority in the universe. And we even see a glimpse of this guy. And when you see him, you're like, holy crap. Is that who I think it is? And it's not Zeno. He looks similar to Zeno. He has similar color pattern, has a similar body shape, but he's very different. And it is not Zeno. Shin continues. Various universes were created, and many Majin began to move to those universes. Rimus-sama then chose a select few from among us Glins and sent us to monitor the universes as Supreme Kais. And many Glin ancestors moved to a planet near Rimus-sama. Back then, warp was able to be used freely to travel between the realms. And here it is, folks. The connection we've been waiting for. It should be obvious for some people, but apparently, you have to have visuals and straight up confirmation. The 12 Kaioshin, including Gowasu, and all the ones we met from the Universe 6 tournament, through the Tournament of Power, we see an image of all of them side by side, leaving the Demon Realm together. The Kaioshin from all 12 universes. It is official. It was already official because it's obvious that this is Toriyama's work, and Dragon Ball Super is canon. It is part of the main continuity. This is going directly into Super. I don't know when, I don't know where, but this is going to connect to it, and I think we've got big stuff coming. But anyways, Bulma asks if every being in the universe is then a descendant of the Majin, just like we thought with the people with the pointy ears when they originally mentioned it. But that's not the case. Humanity on Earth and the Saiyans were created after the universe was created. So we can breathe. Take a breath. The Saiyans are not from the demon realm. Thank God. I did not want that to be the case. I did not want them to have demon ancestry or something like that, because then we're gonna get the corny form or ideas of like, oh well, now we can get demon Super Saiyan or Super Saiyan demon mode or whatever. But man, I don't even know what to think about this. This is huge. We finally see the guy who, or yeah, the guy who created the actual Dragon Ball multiverse. And the demon realm predates all of this. That was already a theory, but now hearing it and seeing it is insane. Dabura's father, Abura, feared the potential threats from the outside and then limited the use of warp, which is why they have to have pin numbers and special permission to travel. The Glins who remained in the second demon room revolted against Abura and escaped to the outside universe. Then, Supreme Kai was chosen to become a Supreme Kai, which sounds like it may have been the group of Glins that had Daikaioshin and all the other Kaioshin, like Northeast, Southwest, the ones that Kid Buu killed all those years ago. It sounds like that's the group. And we learned that the Glin trees did die, in fact, which eventually means that the Glins are apparently going to die out once, the last ones are gone, which would be like Shin or Nahare and Dagasu and his sister. And I don't know if it's well, no, it would be the exact same for the other universes because they're all from these same trees. Because they're all from the demon realm. I almost forgot. Like, I almost said, I was like, well, maybe they have their own trees, but that's not the case. They're all from the same demon world. They all came from one of the 5 Kaioshin trees. I don't even know what to think right now. I have a lot to take in. There was so much information this episode and there's a lot to process. There's a lot to talk about, and it is a good day to be a Dragon Ball fan, bro. Holy cow. I shouldn't even feel overwhelmed, but I kind of am just with all this information. Anyways, Hibis, he says that Shin's a smart guy, and he's actually a lot nicer, unlike Dagesu and Arinsu. Vegeta gets all their attention. He's like, well, in that case, we have to go and get the Tamagami. We have to go to the next Tamagami. We have to collect that Dragon Ball and return to normal. So they hop on their plane. They continue on their way. Goku says it's way too crowded, and Glorio takes over as pilot because he's familiar with the area, and Hibis is not. And just before they take off, once they're all situated, we see some footsteps. Pans out. We see an old Namekian. He's actually covered in shadow, approaching the plane, and we see Neva, that creepy Namekian from episode 1. He's here, and he just pulled up on them. So I don't know what's going on next week, but man, we're in for a treat. Dragon Ball Daima is picking up, and it is picking up fast. That's all I have for you. What an episode. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you got a lot out of this. Get excited. We've been wanting. I don't even know what to say right now. Like, as Dragon Ball fans, there's been so much we've been wanting and so many things we've wanted to learn about. And now that we're actually learning them, I don't even know how to react. Thank you for stopping by. Hit that like and subscribe. It really helps me out, guys. Take care. Have a good week. We'll catch you next time.